All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the European Committee of the Regions. It is my great pleasure to welcome you today to the final event of the NECPlatform project. As the coordinator of the project, I'm very honored to open this crucial discussion on multi-level governance. The project actually demonstrated the power of structured and coordinated dialogues. Over the past year, we have worked across 6 EU member states to build and implement these platforms for coordination. Our discussion today will highlight the power, actually, and the successes encountered in these efforts. We'll hear from policymakers, from experts, who were directly involved in this, in the implementation of these dialogues. So one key lesson from the project is clear. Multi-level governance is not just a technical necessity, it's a democratic imperative. So as we look ahead, we must ask ourselves, how can we continue investing in this crucial topic? How can we strengthen the cooperation between the different governance levels? Before we start, I would like to express my gratitude to the European Committee of the Region that is hosting us today. I would also like to thank the Polish Secretary of State, Mrs. Zielinska, for being with her today, as well as our distinguished speakers who have joined us to share their insight and expertise. So finally, thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you for your patience. I know that downstairs was a bit tricky, but I think we almost made it. So thanks a lot for being with us. Now I would like to invite Mrs. Zielinska to give a short opening speech.
Shall I sit here?
I think it should be that way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this kind invitation, dear participants, ladies, gentlemen, friends. It's a real pleasure to see the full room. Many young people as well interested in this topic. Today we've come together to take a closer look at complex layers of cooperation between governments, between local governments on all the levels, and look at how decisions, before they are met, have to be discussed and agreed, and we have to come to conclusions together at many levels before we all, as a union, can really move forward. And this is a process that is, it takes patience and it takes willingness and understanding for this process, because it's very complex. Obviously, example of a meeting I'm just coming from. Yesterday we had a Council of Energy and decisions and topics, and before big decisions are met, there is a lot of conversation and a lot of discussion in meetings like yesterday's Council. There are examples, perhaps especially in the field of climate resilience and climate risks that we're facing across the world today, that show us how regional influence, regional decision-making is important, and it's not enough if we just focus on our country's strategies, for example, to cope with climate adaptation, because climate doesn't know regional or city boundaries or country boundaries. We see strains and events almost every day and month in Europe alone that show us we have to be very well coordinated across all levels of governance. And so it's essential to manage it well, to address diverse needs, challenges, uphold principles that are foundations of the European Union, like subsidiarity principle, enhance cooperation between governments, various stakeholders, and this is where, of course, national states and regions represent their interests and their needs. But then at a multi-level governance, we ensure that these interests are represented and addressed in a cohesive manner, and everyone feels included. Subsidiarity principle is also one of the fundamentals for European Union to ensure division of competencies with the community. Empowerment of local, regional authorities is key to make decisions that are understood from the smallest communities through to big decision makers at the European levels. And I think there is a lot of work that we have to do in this process to make sure that decisions that are created and made within the European Union are well understood in the smallest communities, and we take everyone on the journey with us, because if we don't do it, we lose people on the way, and they don't understand, and those processes will not be well embedded, and they may not be working at the end. So this is something I firmly believe in, and I can see as a very impatient politician in my parliament that I would love to have change implemented a lot faster, that perhaps the processes and the process of agreeing it with diverse groups of people is allowing me to, and it makes me impatient many times. And I speak to local councillors who would want to have a completely different decisions because their local communities want something else, or have not quite understood my agenda and what I'm there to offer. And it takes time, but once we understand each other, really implementation is just an icing on a cake. And before, and if we don't, we have a lot of issues and problems after in the process, and the process may not be fully implemented how we would want it to, and the change may not be fully implemented how we want, because someone there didn't quite understand the full meaning of it. So on that note, and without further ado, I'll let you to get on with your fruitful discussions. I very much believe in our cooperation, irrespectively of the regions and countries of where we come from, because wherever I am, I can see that we have so much more in common than any divisions between any countries or cultures or communities. And I so firmly believe in that through cooperation like this one today, we can come up with amazing solutions, and this is what drives society forward. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to open this and have a great conversations and a great debate for the rest of the day. Thank you very much for having me here again, and yeah, have a good one. Have a good day.
Thank you very much for being with us today. I know that you have a packed program, so thanks a lot for being with us today. Now I would like to continue and invite Mr. Klisovic. To give his view on the role and why do we need actually a multi-level governance. You've been actually involved quite a lot in that topic recently, so I think you may have some views on that. So Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, of course. I have my strong views on that. Good day to everybody. I'm very happy to see such a big number of people interested in this topic. And let me start by explaining how I get in contact with multi-level governance from the very beginning. So my first contact with the multi-level governance was my first speaking engagement here in Brussels when I became a member of Committee of Regions. That was 2 years ago. I didn't know anything about it at the time. I used to be Deputy Foreign and European Affairs Minister. So I was viewing this multi-level governance from the perspective of national government. And I was negotiating with other ministers in FAC and GAC, very important things, policies, goals, lofty goals. It was so important. And then when we finally managed to reach certain compromises, very often rotten compromises, conflicting compromises, then we just left implementation to local and regional authorities. And we didn't bother anymore. Then we were not very satisfied with that implementation. And we were thinking, well, these poor politicians, poor guys in local and regional authorities, they're for nothing. I mean, if they really were something, they would be at the national or European or even global level, but not at the local level. That's how it started. That was my perception. And then I became president of the City Assembly of Zagreb and a local politician. And suddenly I realized that I couldn't be farther from the truth, from the reality that I have had been when I was at the national level. I was blind, in fact. I wanted everything we agreed in European institutions to be implemented, but I never asked what's needed for implementation. Then I decided to really take up this file. And my first speaking engagement 2 years ago was at your event in some of the clubs or restaurants when I was speaking for the first time on the basis of notes of briefing which was prepared by a colleague who is sitting up there from Croatia, from Regea, Miljenko. He was teaching me, about the problems and challenges and how to address them. So I start really to immerse myself into the matter. And I took that file. I was appointed rapporteur on this issue of multi-level governance by the COR, Committee of Regions. And then I took another very important person in my life, professional life, and that's Melanie, as a leading technical expert for the opinion from Energy Cities. So we, as a team, we were working on the file, trying to rectify the perception, not just mine, but general perception that local authorities are not important, and to propose concrete proposals, concrete measures to improve implementation. Because very quickly I realized that to translate words, and we were negotiating, and putting words into documents at the national and European level, to translate that into deeds, concrete projects, concrete results, concrete success, you need implementation. And the main implementers, 75% of these, acquis communautaire in general, but of Green Deal in particular, are local and regional authorities. So we first try to see what are the main challenges for implementation. And then we had a survey. I talked to many local politicians, but we have a survey as well asking them to respond on our questions, what really bothers you in implementation phase. And some of the first answers were overlapping goals, policies, plans at the local level, at the national level, at the European level. Everything is mixed up. We don't know really what to implement anymore. Then there were very confusing, conflicting sometimes, and inconsistent reporting procedures and monitoring methodology. So people didn't know how to really report on the basis of which methodology, since each initiative which was coming from Brussels or nationally had different methodology. And you have just one team in your city who is responding on that, and usually on the same things, but in different way. It's confusing, it's burdensome. And then we realized there is something called implementing requirements, which are far beyond capacity and ability of cities to do it. And when I say capacity, I think financial capacity. When I say ability, I think of workforce. We simply don't have enough skillful, experienced, educated people who can immediately implement very sophisticated policies, which we agree here in Brussels. So reskill, upskill, building these capacities of cities is absolutely crucial for implementation. Even today, we have a huge deficiencies of workforce. And we need to do that with the assistance of national governments and European authorities to build programs for capacity building in local authorities. We are big cities. We have our regional climate and energy agencies backed with good experts. But we are capital of Croatia. We have that luxury that many experts live in Croatia and are employed by the city. So they can lend politicians their expertise in order to guide them to take the proper decisions. But all the rest of the cities and municipalities of Croatia, we don't have that huge number of experts. So we need to help them to build administrative capacity to implement policies. And then financing. We very quickly realized that cities can't really apply directly with their projects to implement these lofty goals agreed in Brussels. They can't directly apply for EU money, for EU funds. But everything goes through national governments, which basically allocate money. And when your city is run by opposition at the national level, so two different parties run a state and a city, then you have slim chances to get some money. Sometimes that's what we call nationalization or politicization of EU funds. Sometimes political considerations override, let's say, practical need to implement. Then we realized that the procedure to get money from the EU funds is very complex and very lengthy. It should be simplified. Otherwise, we lose lots of time to get money, and this is not something we like. And in addition to that, we need really to strengthen administrative capacity, people who knows how to apply for EU funds. Co-financing requirements sometimes are a huge problem for us. So that should be changed and simplified as well. Not all of the municipalities and cities have put aside a huge amount of money to co-finance projects which should be financed by EU funds. So there are many problems linked to finances, and all of us, we know that there is a huge gap in MMF, current MMF, related to investments to really achieve climate and energy goals. The Commission itself assessed 600 billion euros of that gap of investments in MFF, while we know that some 390 billion euros annually is lacking for decarbonization of our European economy. So obviously we need more money to be allocated to these policies. We need a simpler procedure, a shorter procedure, and we need, as it is, direct access to money if we really want to implement these policies strongly. But even public money is not enough. City budgets, national budgets, European funds, not enough. We need private money. We need to attract private money into the projects, implementation projects. And in order to do that, we should be allowed to use public money to attract private money. So we should do it in partnership. What we need is direct economic incentives from national level, like loans and grants for certain projects. We need fiscal measures, like tax relief, incentive or subsidies, something, or green bonds, as we do it in Zagreb. So first two obstacles, requirements which were not met for local authorities to really implement these climate and energy goals were either inadequate finances and lack of competent workforce. Then multi-level governance. Once you really realized that you should efficiently implement these policies, you realize that you can't do it alone. But there are other players in the game, national governments and European institutions. And then all of the mayors, not many, but all of them, they complained that local and regional authorities are not involved from the very beginning in designing policies and setting goals. But they are involved at the very end. As I mentioned from my experience, they were just told to implement which somebody else really designed and set as goals. So in that situation, there is no really that psychological feeling that you are part of the process, that you own the process as well, that you own that policy and goals which you should implement afterwards. So that's where we saw that multi-level governance doesn't function as it was envisaged in governance regulations and famous Article 11, which is a good article, but unfortunately didn't produce results which we needed. So then I realized that we need to develop a formula how to address these challenges of multi-level governance. And we developed so-called SIG formula, for situations, SIG formula, which goes S for simplification, I for integration, and C for collaboration. So simplification, we meant that all the procedures, reporting mechanisms, everything should be simplified in order to be effectively implemented by cities and regions. Integration, horizontal integration was absolutely necessary because we realized that many different policies conflict. And then we have a problem. Environmental policy, agricultural policy, financial policy, economic policies, health policies, and other policies. They were not really coherent. They were conflicting, and we were supposed to implement these conflicting goals. So breaking silos between sectorial policies is key to achieve coherent policy framework, which would be then clear to local and regional authorities what they need to implement. So horizontal integration. And then collaboration, C. This is vertical integration. This is basically multi-level governance. And here we proposed a permanent multi-level dialogue platform, which should work not as present Article 11 of governance regulations, which can be instigated only by the governments on national level, but in our proposal, we propose that even local authorities can take initiative and ask for consultations once the government is silent. And there is not the same situation in every member state. In some member states, governments are more active, while in others, they're just, neglecting this area. So local authorities, regional authorities should have an opportunity to instigate the consultations, and for that we need a permanent multi-level dialogue platform, which should ensure upstream involvement of local and regional authorities as the real partners and as the representatives of public interest. We are elected politicians, elected by citizens, the same as national politicians. And we were treated as stakeholders like NGOs, business community, academia, and the rest of stakeholders. We are not. We are representatives of public interest, and we should be recognized as such by the national authorities. What we proposed as a second concrete proposal was implementation chapter in NECPs, where we want concrete commitment of the governments, how they are going to support implementation in terms of finances and in terms of capacity building, which I mentioned at the very beginning, of local authorities, administrative capacity building. Then we want to see what other ideas have government to better implement these goals. And then we need to have a platform for quick consultations in a time of crisis. If crisis hit, how we are going to respond? Because we feel the heat of grievances of citizens when something is not well. We at the local level. So we need then a quick coordination mechanism with government, which should be provided by the permanent multi-level dialogue platform, which should be recognized by the NECP. Then our third proposal was, we realized that local and regional authorities do not have a proper communication with the European institutions. And that gap should be closed, communication gap. So we should establish a channel of communication with the EU institutions. We realized very quickly that there are many cities in Europe, many regions in Europe, and each of them have different positions on many issues. So we can't come in thousands of us to speak with the European Commission, European Parliament, or Council. We realized that very, very quickly. But that's why we have Committee of Regions. It should be called Committee of Cities and Regions, as a place where we should really reconcile our different positions and come out with one common position as cities and regions. And for that, we need now a place or a mechanism to speak with European institutions. They need to hear us, what we really need for better implementation, and in the time of designing policies, to hear us what we would need afterwards for implementation, before we really agree on policies. So we have it from all the aspects. What does it mean, multi-level governance? To me, it means we are taking decisions as a team, all three levels, local, national, European. And everybody feels the result of our policy as our own, and we are very motivated to implement it. If we don't have that, then we have a problem in implementation. So that's why we advocate so-called trialogues, so some kind of communication between local authorities, EU authorities, and national authorities. And we need even European Union to have an eye on NECPs and how governments are drafting NECPs in order to ensure that kind of communication, which is absolutely crucial for implementation. Then what we propose is one-stop shop. We should have at the level of European Union one-stop shop where all the local and regional authorities can really turn to when they need, if they need advice, if they need any kind of information or support for better implementation. And we would need, another thing we proposed is to have a platform of exchange of good or best practices. So let us see how others did it. Maybe I can implement it in the same way. So I would not be then in a position to invent warm water, as we say in Croatia, since warm water was already invented. So these were some of our proposals. I think my time is up. Yeah? Okay. But what is the end result of all of this? That's now more and more politicians, local politicians, who are really ready to be very vocal, advocating these positions which I'm explaining to you. In some member states, we have really good response. Croatia is one of them, but not in all of them. And we saw that the Commission is not very satisfied with these, while assessing these new NECPs. So it must be much better than what we have at the moment. Let me just very briefly say what are the last two obstacles for a better implementation. Inadequate and very rigid legal framework. Sometimes, because of the national laws, we can't really implement good projects or support citizens' initiatives. Just an example, in Croatia, you can install solar panels on the roof of your house, only if it's a privately owned house. But if you live in an apartment building, then you can't do that because of the limitations provided by law. So what we now are doing as a city of Zagreb are asking our national parliament to amend the law in order to allow people who live in apartment buildings to install solar panels on the roof of their building and become prosumers, from consumers to prosumers of energy. So rigid legal framework, inadequate legal national framework is a problem. And in implementation phase, we see it. Then the fifth requirement for implementation, which is very important, public support. There is not enough public understanding for the importance of green transition, clean energy transition. And citizens will listen to you only if you come with tangible, concrete projects, where they can see concrete benefits from themselves. As Mr. Draghi said in his report, if they see it on their energy bill, it's going down, then they will believe it. If they see their local economy booming, then they will believe it. Otherwise, they won't believe it. So public participation is important as well. And when we are talking about public participation, I usually say we are not trying to tell the story to citizens, how important this is. But what we need is to write that story together with citizens. They need to feel themselves to be a part of it. Otherwise, we will fail. Thank you for time being.
Thank you, Mr. Klizovic. I think you can stay with us. I will invite my colleague, Giulia Pizzini. We'll shortly present you the success story of the NECPlatform project that is actually behind this, this event before we move on actually with our panel discussion. So, NECPlatform, you can go to the next. When we actually started the project, we asked the NECPlatform partners the following question: what picture would best illustrate multi-level governance in your country? And the three pictures that you see in the slide actually emerge. So you have a bowl of spaghetti representing the unstructured governance in the different countries. Then you have a maze to escape, symbolizing actually the difficulty for local and regional authorities to navigate in national policies. And finally, this missing puzzle representing or highlighting the lack of governance. So the NECPlatform as such is about setting up, implementing these so-called multi-level climate and energy dialogue platforms in 6 member states. So we have Bulgaria, we have Croatia, we have France, Italy, Romania, and Portugal. So these platforms are actually mandated by the, you mentioned it, the Article 11 of the governance regulation. So as I said, it all started with Article 11, laying down actually the legal foundation of the project. And we believe that, it was the European Commission at the time introducing this shift in how the national policies should actually be designed. Unfortunately, we saw actually that that obligation was mostly ignored by member states. So that's what we actually try to do with the project in the next slide, to put Article 11 into action, to put it from theory to action. And we actually made it real through the project. We organized 38 multi-level climate and energy dialogues in the 6 member states that I just mentioned. We involved more than 300 organizations throughout the project, more than 1,000 individuals. We've been actually referenced in the Croatian, Portuguese, and Romanian NECP as a good practice, as a good platform, actually, for coordination, for collaboration between the different governance level. Maybe Julia?
Yes, thanks, Thibault. Thanks, Melanie. So, as Thibault said, when we started, we had the article, but not much more. So also member states didn't know how to implement the article. So of course we're not here pointing fingers at the national level, because also the national level didn't have the tools or the knowledge, necessary knowledge to implement this article. So the first thing we did, sorry, I have a low voice. The first thing we did was to start with our research, and we tried to identify what is already out there. So we shortlisted 50 initiatives that are ongoing in Europe and that have some characteristics that would allow us to call them multi-level governance initiatives. And from there we analyzed them and tried to identify which characteristics were the winning ones, so the conditions that could enable these type of platforms to actually effectively work. And the 7 characteristics that you see behind us are the findings we had. So of course, there is no silver bullet, because we have 27 member states and all member states are different. So all the differences must be valued and taken into considerations. But in generic principles, we saw that independence from the political sphere is a value, meaning that if the partner that leads these dialogues or these platforms is the ministry, that can create problems, because of course then other subnational authorities or actors could feel kind of in a relationship of power that is not really even. So if a third party implements these platforms, that could be a win-win solution, because it unburdens the ministries, but it also gives a bit more independence from them. Legitimacy. So the actors that are involved should have a reason to be there. So of course this means that the ministries should of course be there and have a prominent role, together with other actors, including subnational authorities, which means most of the times networks, because in many countries, in many member states, there are thousands of municipalities or a high number of regions. So, of course, it's not really good to have 700 people sit in a room to discuss. Patience is also a very valuable ingredient, because in order to set up these processes, you need time, you need to invest, you need to create relationships, which is also the last of these 7 characteristics. And therefore, it's also normal that if the governance regulation was published in 2018, it takes time for member states to set up this type of platforms. Flexibility, which means that, as I said before, differences need to be taken into account, and also situation changes. We saw it with COVID in 2020, so of course you need to adapt to what happens and to the bigger context. At the same time, you also need to be persistent and to regularly meet. So sometimes there is a burning need, like for example the submission of the NECP, but the process should continue even though there is no burning need, and it should be regular, so that people know that every 3, 4, 5 months there is this meeting. And then safety and trust. So all the actors that are involved in this dialogue should feel safe to express their views, their needs, and trust that they will be listened to. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Melanie. Again, as said, we're not here to point fingers, and the national level, of course, also faces a lot of barriers, which also explains why it's so difficult to implement such platforms. So first of all, there is a cultural problem. So ministers are usually used to work in a top-down approach, and it takes time to change this culture. Also, of course, not only ministries, but this is common to many of us, we tend to work against deadlines. And when there are deadlines like submission of the NECP, then of course you need to rush in order to submit the document in time. And this, of course, prevents the time that needs to be dedicated to consultation or to setting up these discussion platforms. Also, NECPs are seen sometimes as bureaucratic tools rather than a political priority. So also the complexity of the governance regulation that takes into account 10-year span and then also long-term is difficult to take into consideration. Then within the national level, as within the local or regional level, there is a tendency to think in silos, so already communication amongst ministries is something also that poses a barrier. Lack of staff, as already mentioned before, and also the fact that there is a non-binding nature in the NECP trajectory, and sometimes the long time horizon feels so far away that at the end, taking action and implementing the measures that are within the documents doesn't feel like a stringent need. But if you can go to the next slide, please, Melanie. We have some good examples also of some good stories from the NECPlatform project, so from most of our countries. The first one comes from France, and it's the regional COPs, Conferences of the Party. Ooh, okay.
Now we see even better, the screens.
Can you still hear us? Yes. Yeah. Okay, good. So I can continue speaking. Of course, this was not an initiative that started with our project, but it happened while the project was running. So, of course, especially in France, where the work were led by energy cities, this is something that was discussed a lot. And basically, the regional COPs are platforms organized in each French region where all the actors can actually share their voice, and then all these voices are listened to at the national level. So the first cycle is about to finish, and now there will be some reshuffling or updating of the process in order to improve the next cycle. But this is a very good practice, and we were also part of these COPs. In Croatia, we will hear more about this later from Ms. Zoric. We had a very, very good engagement, as Mr. Klizovic also said, with 9 ministries participating in the climate and energy dialogues, with participation of also local authorities and the private sector. So it was a very, very good engagement, and we hope that this continues going, although the project has ended. If you go to the next slide, Melanie. In Bulgaria, there were some initial difficulties, so the strategy was to start from the bottom, so bottom up, and to gather the voices of the cities especially, and bring these voices to the ministry as a unified message. And this was recognized also by the ministries that later got on board. There was some political turbulence in Bulgaria in the last 3 years, so a lot of changes, but it was considered as very useful. The same can be said for Italy, so it was really, really hard to get in touch or create a trust relationship with the ministry, although we tried from different angles. And so even there was a position paper written by other authorities that were not really listened to, presented to the ministry for it to be taken into account. And in Romania, we will also hear more from Mrs. Mares later. There was an interinstitutional working group that was set up by the ministry. So in a way, our colleagues from Energy Cities Romania managed to get into that working group and to bring concerns also of their networks and the city directly to the ministry. If you go to the next slide, okay, this is my last one. So you might wonder, why are we here? The NECPs are submitted, so why should we keep talking about multi-level governance? And this is a very good question, and the answer we think is very important. And this is because the role of regional and local authorities is increasingly recognized also in European legislation, as mentioned also before. These are just 3 examples of 3 directives that are in the Fit for 55 packages, and in each of them there are at least 3 articles that are asking or requesting the action of local and regional authorities. And in each of them, there is a sentence that says that national governments should not only support local and regional authorities administratively, but also financially, including organizing in-depth consultation and co-creation processes. And there is also, of course, more than that, including, for example, the social climate plans and other legislations. This is just an example.
Thank you, Julia. If we can move on with the... Before, I think, yeah. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
So just to wrap up and conclude, basically, from the project, we derived some recommendation. You will see as well on your desk the printed copies of a guidebook that we actually indeed drafted. So this is the main summary of the project. We try to extract good examples, not so good examples as well, because we face some as well, some challenges, with a clear method, a clear methodology on how to implement, how to set up these dialogues. And in this slide, you'll see that these are the key main recommendation. And from our perspective, we saw that multi-level governance or multi-level dialogues actually work there when there are available resources, when there are people behind it to steer, to coordinate it. And that was actually one of the added value of the project, because we had project partners to actually steer and to coordinate the work on the ground with the different stakeholders. And one thing as well that we believe is that these platforms should not be platforms that discuss only specific policies, but should be these long-term and long-lasting platforms, and should actually, define not only the what, the trajectory, but as well the how. How do we actually implement these policies? What kind of means do we need to actually, provision to local and regional authorities? And as we say, we need as well to pay attention to the quality. It's not only about the quantity of the dialogues, but as well the quality of the dialogues. What kind of content is being discussed in these platforms. Maybe the slide before, who's behind it actually? As I said, the project actually took place thanks to the hard work of 7 organizations. So Energy Cities has been the main partner coordinating the project together with the ICP. Then we had 5 national organizations. We have 0 in Portugal, Regia in Croatia, and Effect in Bulgaria. Energy Cities again in France. We had Coordinamento Agenda 21 in Italy, and then Energy Cities Romania in Romania. So to conclude, what's next? That's the final actually slide. Stop or encore. So as I said, we developed a manual for you to actually take the methods, the learning back home. We also involved 11 different organizations in our so-called replication program. And some of you are actually in the room, ministry representatives, some NGOs, where we will have actually a full day tomorrow, a full day workshop to go deeper into the content of this multi-level governance topic. And one thing that we actually said and concluded is that it took us almost 3 years to establish the ground in these 6 countries. Now the project is coming to an end, so we're looking at ways to continue that work in other countries as well. So we actually call as well on the European Commission to keep investing in that crucial topic in the future. And maybe to take again the illustrated metaphor that I was using actually at the beginning. So we entangle let's say the spaghetti. We found somehow the exit, and we partially completed the puzzle. Still, many doors remain actually closed, and many puzzle pieces are still missing. So keep investing in that topic, and the support here of the EU is very, very crucial. So thanks a lot. I will now maybe give you the floor back, and introduce our dear speakers for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And so we are moving together now. We are moving to interactive part of our session today. So buckle up, please. And the title of this panel is Renewing the Partnership Between Local, Regional, National and EU Levels on Climate and Energy Policy. I would maybe rephrase it in establishing effective partnership. So my panelists today will be Madam Paula Abro Marquez, Deputy Director, DG ENER, Energy Policy, Strategy and Coordination, European Commission, indispensable part of our work, absolutely. Then I have Alexandra Mares, Councillor, Director General for Energy Policies, Ministry of Energy, Romania. Here you are. Then Ana Zoric from Croatia, my compatriot, Ministry of Defense. So one country. Finance, I'm sorry. Yeah, we are in defense all the time now with the latest. Finance, yeah, I'm sorry. So one country, two perspectives, local and national. We'll see whether they differ. Then Benedetta Briganti, President of AESS. Where is she? She's coming. Please join us. Matthias Duvet, Head of Climate Ecological Institute. Nice to have you here. And Frédéric Boyer, Head of Covenant of Mayors Europe. No, okay. Right. So let's start. Please feel free to raise your hands whenever you feel a need to ask something to our panelists. I will first break the ice and ask them a couple of questions to kickstart the debate. First, a couple of very quick and small questions which can be answered with yes or no. To Paula, do you really feel that there is kind of lack of communication between EU institutions or Commission and the local level? You can say yes or no. Is there
It's not a yes or a no.
Okay.
It's, I think we are improving the situation.
Okay, so it means it's not perfect. We realize that, we recognize that, we are changing it. That's what I wanted to hear. And that brings me to Article 11 of famous governance regulations, which is kind of cultural change, because we are trying to push member states to collaborate more with regional and local level. So could you tell us very briefly, what was the rationale behind that provision?
First of all, good afternoon. Glad to be here. Before starting to reply to your question, to congratulate for all those involved in this NECPlatform project. I think we have all learned a lot from it. It is very inspirational. It has helped enormously the 6 countries involved, and we hope that is also a good examples to follow for the other 21 member states. We are very pleased that we have been involved by supporting through the LIFE program this important project. So what is the origin? I think perhaps we can find the origin in the Energy Union itself, which dates back to 2015, so well before the governance regulation. And it was a simple recognition that in order to have impact, notably with the energy transition, we needed to have all the layers in administration and the citizens, everybody involved. And basically because in order for things to change in the ground, you need to have the local people involved. And I think that objective is more and more valid today, where we see that we are reaching, we want to reach a much higher level of penetration, for instance, of renewables, and it's necessary to have the local support. If you have the local opposition, nothing happens on the ground. So you really need to have the local administration, local population ownership of the energy transition, more and more. So I think that's the origin of it, and it's even more pressing needs today. And eventually, I would even risk to say that, as you may have noticed, one of the this von der Leyen II Commission, so is very much focused on implementation and delivering results on the ground. So it's not only coming with new things, but implement what has been agreed before. And one of the things that has been proposed, and every commissioner, including my commissioner, Mr. Jorgensen, is asked to do, is what is called implementation with stakeholder dialogue. So in a way, I think it gets some sort of inspiration from this multi-level dialogue. And so my commissioner is asked, as every commissioner, is asked to do two things: 2 dialogues minimum a year, and with stakeholders, and also report on these to the parliaments and the council. So I think it's perhaps we have started a good thing with the governance, with the energy union, the governance regulation. Your project helped to shed some light on the opportunities, and it has gone to a higher level even in terms of delivering on the European project. So to have stakeholders, dialogues on implementation across the board, not only energy, across the board, every commissioner is asked to do that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can I then ask you a follow-up question? I mean, there is really, and we feel it, growing recognition of the role of local and regional authorities in implementation of climate and energy goals. So how do you see really the evolving of this Article 11, and can some good practices, if they exist, within the member states help in evolving this Article 11?
Yeah, the Article 11, as we heard before, I mean, it was a new thing, a new concept, and of course, as every new concept takes time to be the right speed. We have received the final plans, not all, by the way. Still, we are at 22, which are finalizing the assessment, and soon you will see our assessment of those plans. I think we see an evolution, a positive evolution. But perhaps also, I mean, as everything in European affairs, you need to see what is your baseline. So perhaps for certain member states, it was easier to implement Article 11 because perhaps it's more enshrined in their own way of managing policy. Perhaps also linked to the fact, perhaps for those member states have a more decentralized authority when it comes to manage energy and climate policies. In countries like, I don't know, Spain, where you have much more autonomy in the regions for policy development, you can have an easier application of Article 11. Also for small member states like Luxembourg or Estonia, perhaps easier as well than for another type of member state. So we have to also to bear in mind the baseline, so the situation on the ground. But all in all, we have seen evolution. We have, I mean, there are very good examples, and in the project NECPlatform, you mentioned several good examples, and one of those that I retained, perhaps because it comes from my country, Portugal, is that the project has enabled a better preparation or a better involvement of these different layers, the national, regional, local, in the preparation of the final national energy and climate plan. I can say that I saw that. I was pretty much in contact with the government, so central government, and their care and attention paid to the consultation and go by region as well. So I think it was a very good impact and example. Now, one important thing that you should not forget is that there are the NECPs, but there are also the biannual reports on the implementation of the NECPs. And this year is a special year because we are receiving them. The deadline was mid-March. We have not received yet all, of course, but already some parts of it. Member states have been submitting. It's all electronic. So this is also the place where we expect member states to report on how they have implemented Article 11. So let's see what comes out from there. Thanks.
Yeah, let's see. Any question from Paola at the moment? No, Commission clear as every time. So let's move to Romania and Alessandra. Alessandra, you're coming from Romania. It's southeast neighborhood of Croatia. It's a Balkan peninsula. Sometimes I feel that people in Balkans are just taking for granted green transition and clean energy transition. Do you feel that there is enough awareness among the people that they should support such a transition? And in that context, do you need really to lead the process, or citizens are part of the process? What are really the main challenges in Romania in coordinating all these level of governments?
Yes, many of these challenges were already mentioned in this meeting, but I resume three of them, which I consider are the main or the most important for Romania, for the Romania case. First one is fragmented policy framework. Different levels of governance may have varying policy frameworks, making it challenging to ensure consistency in the application of climate and energy policies. I think this is the most challenging for us. And the next one, also important, is resistance to change. Some regions or local authorities may be resistant to adopting new policies, particularly if they perceive them as being disconnected from their specific needs, or if they face challenges in terms of economic or social adaptation, because you've mentioned the energy transition process. It's very challenging still for us. And the last one, the last but not the least, because you've mentioned the reporting process, which is challenging for us, the monitoring and accountability. Because ensuring effective monitoring and accountability across governance levels is difficult, particularly when it comes to tracking process. Different level of governance may have different system and capacities for data collection, and it's in the end a complicated process.
Definitely it is. But let me ask you, you have submitted your NECP to European Commission for evaluation. So is there any lessons learned from the process? Would you change something if you are requested to do it next year again?
For sure, I would strengthen the involvement of local authorities from the beginning of this updating process. Instead of limiting the regional involvement in the consultation phase, which we've done, I would engage them in earlier policy design process, ensuring that local realities are included from the beginning. Also could be a solution to establish a national guide tailored for the specificities of of each member state, probably, for informing and raising awareness with respect to the application of NECP. With help of this guide, we can collect data which are so much needed in our reporting process.
Excellent. I mean, these words are music for my ears. I hope for yours as well. So involvement of local and regional authorities from the very beginning in the process. So planning to continue work and collaboration with the local and regional authorities. Excellent. Thank you very much for your input. And now I'm turning to Ana Zoric, Minister of Finance, not Defense, but they're defending our finances, our state finances. So let us hear now the perspective of national perspective on the same issue. I was explaining the local perspective, not just of Croatia, but even of other member states, since I had many, many talks and consultations with our local mayors in different member states. So, multi-level governance in Croatia. This is one of the stars, I have to say. I mean, she's really responsible for putting in place financing multi-level mechanism which help us really to finance many of our projects. So can you tell us what are really the key achievements of multi-level governance in Croatia?
I would start with, please don't stop this project going further, because we see it, so we became familiarized from the Ministry of Finance with the REGEA and the continuous work on climate and energy policies only a few years ago, but without their help we wouldn't be where we are today. And this is why I'm proud to see that in the documents that we received, a number of good examples coming from Croatia. This is a really key, especially for smaller countries, to work together, to connect all the stakeholders together, and to have national, regional, and all stakeholders' perspective together, working together to achieve. As I've said, as I've mentioned, this is especially a challenge for smaller countries. Mr. Klisovic said multiple times we are struggling with administrative capacities in the smaller countries, but even I think in the bigger countries there is not enough collaborations between different stakeholders, and this is really the greatest challenge that we are facing, I have to say, even from the Ministry of Finance side. Ministry of Finance started working with REGEA on national dialogue with the stakeholders, as I've said, 2 years ago. We had 7 dialogues so far. From my perspective, they were really, really successful. And the key achievement is, I think, is hearing the other stakeholders and to hear their views on the national policies that are being implemented or are sought to be implemented. So basically this two-way communication and establishing two-way communication between the stakeholders is the key. Although sometimes we are not very happy to hear all the burdens that especially regional level, so cities and municipalities are facing, it is important to hear them and to take them into account when working on the new policies that are in place. For Ministry of Finance side, it is especially important to emphasize this collaboration of public and private sector, because regardless of all public means and resources are being invested in climate policies and green transition and energy efficiency projects without further mobilizing private financing, we will not achieve the goals set at the EU level. So basically it is also very important to emphasize this collaboration with the private sector, with the banks and non-banking financial institutions, to move them on really mobilizing the resources that they have towards the green transition projects and green and energy efficiency projects, and we see this as very important topics. I would like just to add that it was not easy to talk about these topics in the Ministry of Finance. So climate and energy dialogue is something that the Ministry of Finance doesn't even have on its radar when talking about finances. And it was really a struggle to make people aware what is happening in Europe. I don't think that any of you in this room needs any further explanations, but every meeting that I had in the initial stages in the Ministry of Finances and with the stakeholders in financial sector, I had to start by explaining what climate change means,
how will we be affected. And then only when I mentioned what are the costs and damages that are arising from climate change and not adapting to the climate change, then people started to realize, okay, we have to start. Now the situation is a bit better, and I have to say that I'm grateful and I'm lucky to say that situation is better because of the actions taken from REGEA and the team working with REGEA, and I'm happy that I'm here today to share the experiences with you.
Thank you very much, Anna. People, you remember when I said how important is coherent policy network, and we should break silos among sectorial policies. So if we have energy or climate policy, and if the finance policy is not engaged, you know, then we don't have a coherent policy network. It's very difficult then to really implement anything. So what Anna did, it was very smart. She spoke to her bosses in a way they understand climate and energy policy. I would never speak in that way. So she was speaking about costs, which can, you know, arise if these policies are not implemented. And then they got interested in the matter. So we should adjust, you know, our communication to the audience in order to get them on board, which is very important. And then, Anna, how we can build now on the progress made in Croatia, particularly how we can institutionalize and in long term all the achievements we really achieved up to now.
Just to complement what you said about earlier, just a moment ago about the costs, I think one of the biggest mistakes when initial talks about green transition started was it will be expensive, but it is much more expensive not to tackle climate change and the issues around it. So basically, when we see the consequences of everything happening throughout Europe and not adapting to the climate change, I think then ministries of finances are becoming more and more involved. Also, I have to say that especially in the smaller countries, I don't know, is it like so in other countries, a lot of initial steps are made by individuals that are keen to make something, to change something and to make something different. And those individuals are starting to build institutional capacities, and then the whole matter becomes institutionalized in more structured way. So this is a way to start. You have to start somewhere, even though it's maybe 10 people in the initial stages, but once the real prospects are made and once the real changes are made within the area of our member states, the true changes can happen. And regardless in which stages your countries are in, start, and with this engagement of a number of stakeholders, then true achievements can be seen and can be visible throughout the system. I have to say that I'm very, very proud on establishing this collaboration with financial sector. They are now very, very aware of the possibilities, and through making the platform there for them to see what is happening. You will hear about it more tomorrow when I'll have the presentation there. We have this motto, so enable, empower and inspire. So basically when the stakeholders see what can be done, they are then more keen to do it.
Thank you for your input, Anna. I saw many people taking notes of what you were saying. So good practice from Croatia can really maybe be tested somewhere else in other member states as well. But we are now moving to Italy.
Yes.
Right, Benedetta. I have to say, Benedetta, that as a politician who needs to take decision on the basis of certain expertise, that I would be completely blocked. My hands will be tied if I don't have our energy and climate local agency, which we call REGEA. What's the situation in Italy? What's the role of energy agency in Italy?
Good morning to everybody. Thanks for the invitation, in particular because this panel is absolutely interesting and because it's very interesting for me to be here, in particular to share the Italian situation. As you know, in Italy we are very famous for our tailor-made, and also in this case I'm here to tell you the story of the Italian energy agencies. We have a lot of energy agencies, and we try to work together in a network, in a national network, in which we try to exchange our point of view, and in particular exchange our challenge, because we are different. Some of us, of our network, are regional energy agencies. For example, the energy agencies of region Lombardia, Tuscany, Liguria. Some of us are province energy agencies, and some other are directly connected, like mine, are directly connected to the municipalities, comuni italiani. And this is very interesting because in this way we could have a very great exchange about the multi-level importance, the importance of multi-level governance, but in particular also the importance of the different role that the different level have in our challenge. If we talk with the national Italian network of energy agencies, we could have a very important position to the European level, but because we speak with the one voice, but also to the national level. And it's very, very nice also to in this way be to have the possibility to find the right key for the local level, right key that is different place to place, because you know that in Italy the Nord approach for the mitigation and adaptation is completely different from the South approach of national adaptation and mitigation, and we can exchange the importance, the view about our connection to the policy that we have in Italy, not only by the side of energy, but also by the side of multi-level governance. That is very important because in, for example, regional level, you know, we must decide important thing about not only energy side, but also, for example, social side, energy poverty, or, for example, the sharing economy, a lot of topic that now is in the hand of the energy agencies. As for us, it's not simple because it's not an historical approach. For example, the social approach that is common for energy agencies. 10 years ago we were and we studied about energy, we studied about building, but now we are facing two completely different topics, and we need to create an harmony between all these topics. And the better thing that we are made from Europe. We were born 20 years ago, and so in our blood there is the European materia, the European soul, and this is very important because with this key there is the possibility to link the real multi-level governance that we find in Italy, that start with the environment ministry, social ministry, research ministry, and arrive to the smaller municipality that in Italy is around 100 inhabitants. So not easy, very far, and we are in the middle. We try to create this important harmony and this important possibility to speak, the bridge, a technical bridge that try to take respect of every different voice and different approach.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, you emphasized really the importance of networking of energy agencies. That's very important. But politicians are trying to make their own networks as well. So that's why we have Covenant of Mayors, of EU missions, smart cities, climate neutral cities, and etc. Do we have enough connections between technical energy level and political level? And what opportunities really arise from that cooperation? And you were mentioning that there is not enough communication with the EU level. How to improve that, really?
Thanks for the question, because I think that is a very, very important topic. Because, cities are solicited, are very solicited, And in Italy, we are the country that probably could tell you the more long and the biggest history about, for example, the Covenant of Mayors. We have in Italy 8,000 of municipalities, and half is involved in the Covenant of Mayors. It's not simple. It's not simple because, a mayor believe in Covenant of Mayors, sign the Covenant of Mayors, write the SECAP, but it's not easy to maintain the coherence, to maintain the path. And the monitoring is very hard. But it is one of the most important history from the environment side by the municipality. And the history is important, and we must respect a lot the history of a big land as Italy. At the same time, we have different kind of solicitation, like adaptation mission and 100 carbon neutral city mission. In Italy, we have a national board of the Covenant of Mayors, in which there is NEA, that is the National Energy Agencies, ISPRA, that is the National Environmental Agency, and there is also RENAEL, that is the network of the energy local agencies. We are discussing in what way we could create the same harmony that I told you before. And we are opening our board to this mission to try to discuss to them with a path that we want to make together, in what way we could maintain the richness in the same end. To don't transmit to the city the impression and the feeling that they are alone and that they must choose what kind of experience they want, that are not experienced, that have the most important experience in Italy, that is the Covenant of Mayors, that is a cultural approach, an approach through which the municipality could understand, and in Italy they know that a mayor must always think about mitigation, adaptation, and energy poverty. And the cultural upgrade, the cultural approach is the most important thing. Inside this history, inside the reality, is a reality in Italy, we have the richness of the mission. 100 carbon neutral mission. In Italy, we have 9 of these cities focus on mitigation. The adaptation process and the adaptation mission could give us a very potential from the adaptation side. And I think that in this way, also with the richness of this project, and I thank my Italian colleague about this gift that is this project, we could together, but only with a systemic harmony, we could give the right direction. That is only one direction, not 100 direction. And I think that this is the most important thing. Analyze the history of our country, our differences, and inside these differences maintain the same focuses. And we can change name, we can change mission, but the house in Italy is the house of the Covenant of Mayor. And I'm very proud because the 9 cities that sign and have the label of the 100, the mission of the neutral carbon cities, underline that they are able to reach this label because they were in the family of the Covenant of Mayor. And the practical approach of the Covenant of Mayor, the approach that you first step, you analyze the baseline. So it's a concrete approach. And through this very concrete history, they became able to write this new history that is a very, very high analysis with a new climate city contract that is a PAESC with also the investment plan and stakeholder engagement. In this way, we could read the history, the same history with a different color, but it's the same history. Otherwise, we could have the problem to don't recognize where you are and where you must do. Where is the way? And for me, it's very important this. So with not only the energy agency, Italian energy agency, but also with the ministry, with the other colleague from the ENEA of ISPRA, the approach is this one, to try to collaborate continuously in institutional board, in institutional situation, and to engage all the richness, in particular also the content of NECPlatform project. In this way, there is no one alone, and everything you do, also the smallest thing, become important because are useful for a system, and also I think is the best also to have the real possibility to engage everybody, also the citizen, and I think is important.
Thank you, Benedetta, for this illuminating story from Italy. It's really nice to have experts and politicians on the same side of the fence when that fence is implementation fence. Now, in order to ensure gender balance on this panel, we invited Matthias. He is now representing minority and endangered man species here. I'm joking, of course. Matthias. Based on your research, and you've been researching for a long time this area, what are the main success factors for multi-level governance in the EU?
Thank you very much indeed, Josko, and thanks to everyone, thanks to the organizers for having me. I feel like I'm as the researcher that provides the bird's eye perspective across all of the member states. I feel a little bit like you were describing your early experience, seeing kind of the EU level, but not having your hands in the local implementation, as so many of you here on the panel have. And so, just to be very clear, I'm very much aware of that discrepancy, that I'm kind of seeing things from the top and not really like all of the details and the many interactions that you have on the ground. We have indeed had the opportunity to analyze these reports that Paula mentioned, that basically now the deadline was, 3 days ago for the next round for 2025. 2023 was the very first time that these integrated national energy and climate progress reports were due, and we thought this is meant to be the means through which member states show and tell everybody how they're implementing these dialogues. And so we thought this is fantastic as a process and procedure, because it provides like one overview of the information on these plans. So we went under a Horizon 2020 funded project that was called 4i Traction, that has now been concluded. We went and analyzed the reports by member states, and you're talking success factors, and I think this is maybe what, in kind of the research perspective, I would say, criteria for the analysis that we use, but indeed that is ultimately maybe what we're talking about here. We went and checked Article 11. It was on the screen, not entirely, I think, in the full paragraph on screen earlier when Julia and Thibault were presenting, but that was almost it, because it is literally 10 lines long, maybe. And so, but there is a lot that's packed in there that we looked at. So, first, how are these dialogues implemented? The dialogues, the article says, it's mandatory and they should be permanent, and you have to put in place a structure. We also checked for who is actually invited. Very critical, of course, that word multi-level that's in there, especially for this conversation, but the article also lists a whole range of stakeholder groups. So we checked for information on that. And lastly, we checked for the actual impact in terms of these dialogues really generating an opportunity for meaningful participation by all these stakeholders. And so here's what we found. And so again, remember, this is a snapshot of something that member states sent into the Commission now almost 2 years ago. In some cases, they were quite delayed, so not all of them that old. And, first off, they also are immensely diverse, just the sheer length. There's basically just 2 bits of text that is being reported, and you basically had submissions that were basically the length of a social media post. And then you had those that were 2 pages long. And, but a very important length, not necessarily equaling quality in terms of the level of detail here. But what did we find? So first on the how the implementation is happening. I think that's where, the NECP platform basically went about, trying to have one approach and carry that out in each country. So that also, you would be learning and be systematic about it. If you look across the EU as a whole, there's absolutely great diversity in the fora, the means through which also the topics that are being reported. A good half of member states say they put in place something new. So it wasn't necessarily using established things. The one piece I can bring in, by the way, from a national level, that in Germany, the established permanent stakeholder consultation forum, which I had participated in as well, was actually disbanded over the past 3 years. So, excuse me, bad news from the home front. But there are those examples too. So there are like half of the member states report basically establishing a new process and structures. But what we don't really know from the little information that we have in these reports is, would we actually say that these count as the kind of dialogues that really try to involve everybody properly and on the topics? So along the lines of what the project did, for example. That information, that level of detail, we couldn't get from the reporting. Next point, who was actually involved? And there on the plus side, a lot of the stakeholder groups that are listed in the article and that you would expect to be involved are mentioned in some form or another in most of the reports. What I found really astonishing, that in only half of the reports do you find explicit mention of there actually being subnational actors involved. So this whole multi-level dimension that is also we talked about as like really being something new and different here. In half of the reports, there is no indication that multi-level, different levels of government were involved. That can have many reasons. Paula was talking about the great diversity, and we need to understand that smaller member states maybe basically bring their key experts in like one big room, and they cover maybe also different levels because they're that's a totally different story from 8,000 municipalities in Italy, and so that may play into it. But I think that's a worrying sign for our conversation here. And then in terms of impact. Good news that a lot of it seemed to, there were suggestions in the text that there's really a proactive means of an exchange. So this isn't governments coming and saying, here's what we're going to do, any questions, but there's actually an opportunity for exchange, for it is really a consultation and a dialogue. However, the text of Article 11 really lists a couple of specifics, especially in the amended version after the adoption of the EU climate law. It says these dialogues should consider contribution to the EU climate neutrality goal. They should consider energy scenarios also for the long term, and they should discuss monitoring of progress. There is very little evidence in the reports that these broader, more long-term, comprehensive issues are addressed. And so in most cases, and again, maybe understandably so, the focus is on the NECPs because that was the thing that member states had to deliver. But for consultation on the NECPs, there is a separate article in the governance regulation, Article 10, already makes that consultation mandatory. So then, if that's the focus of the dialogues, what is the added value, I think, is what we need to ask. I think I'm going to stop here. So there is some light. There's a lot of potential here. But in terms of this snapshot, there's also quite a bit of shadow.
Thank you very much, Matthias. I'm very impatient to ask you, really out of my curiosity, why? Why you dismembered, dissolved the permanent consultation mechanism? That's something I was advocating, in my opinion. And this feedback from the practice goes completely in different direction. What happened?
I cannot say. This was obviously a decision during the tenure of the now outgoing German federal government that also had a change in assignment of the portfolios of climate and energy moving to different ministries. And somehow I think they were very busy in trying to push forward the agenda. And literally, you said this, or it was mentioned at the start, I think, there just wasn't time. I think it was actually State Secretary Zelinska who referenced this. We were always impatient and want to push things through, but then, basically we don't really give anybody time to provide an input. And so here, this, unfortunately, I would say, definitely fell by the wayside.
Right, thank you. But tell me, as a scientist, you analyzed all these NECPs, as Commission did as well. So what would be your recommendation to strengthen Article 11 or cooperation between national and local level?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question, because this ultimately, should be our goal now. It's not look back at stuff that hasn't worked, but look forward how we can do better. And the specific country examples here and some of the experience that we've heard and the project is gathered is giving, I think, much more detailed insights as to, on a country-by-country basis, what the hindrances and the obstacles are. You mentioned some yourself in your introduction. There's just administrative capacity. There is the expertise. There is time. We had that. There may be a lack of political will. But those things sort of aside, I think if you look at the article as a whole, in it by itself, it's in need of improvement. It doesn't really spell out or explain, why should this be done? What is the added value? We had very, I think, articulate expressions of that. So, make the case. Also explain what actually matters in these dialogues. And I mentioned the confusion with the NECP consultation as well. That if that confusion exists, that's a sign that there is a lack of clarification, specification in the law here. And then also, I think there was the guidance that member states have been given through the implementing decision on the reports themselves also, could be changed. So I think in the article, explain the purpose and the added value, and clarify the qualities that you need. You said yourself you're advocating for a permanent dialogue platforms. The word permanent doesn't feature in the article. It's only in the preambular text. So, small but potentially important change. And the reporting, I told you about tweet size to 2 pages, but even the longer ones not having the information that you look for. So just ask for better information, so that you can have more accountability, more transparency. It's not about asking for more information, more effort, but really about better information. I think that's key. And then there are other options for, addressing the capacity gaps and problems that you hinted at. guidance, support to member states, and maybe, the forum for exchange, you asked for this, that was also in our recommendations, and some political attention. Maybe an event like this, is helping showcase, these are actually important dialogues to implement, but maybe there are other means of showcasing this, because clearly processes like the NECPs as a whole and other key political milestones are getting a lot of attention, also political attention, not even talking about media attention, but investing in these dialogues, you need to know that somebody wants that. And so, if maybe, Commission representatives making national visits maybe it could be an issue that's addressed at a higher level. Maybe there's a dedicated conversation at council level on, multi-level dialogues, joint meeting with the Committee of the Regions, you name it.
Right. Thank you very much. I really do hope that events like this help to advance our case of multi-level governance. And thank you, all of you, dear panelists, for your very nice, really very informative speeches. And now, people, it's your time. It's time for asking questions. Yes, we see the first one. Gentleman on my left. You have a floor.
Hello, thank you very much for this. I think it's really beautiful what we're speaking about and what we're trying to achieve in terms of including more people in the decision making. And indeed, like in view of the Article 11 in the Action Plan for Affordable Energy of the European Commission, it was already mentioned that there is going to be a revision planned for the governance regulation. So it sounds like there is an opportunity for what we're speaking about. However, if you read the news, which you all probably do, it seems like member states are rather going in the direction of simplification and less rules that they want towards climate. So even though there is this window of opportunity, I would like to ask you, how can we actually sell this as something, not to make it more rules, more things that member states need to do when they don't really feel like doing? How can we sell it as a benefit for them? In like very realpolitik almost, if you want.
Thank you very much for your questions. To whom did you address that question? To everybody. Who is willing to start answering? Commission. Please, Paula.
Thank you very much, and allow also to thank the other speakers, because it was many of the things that were said are of high importance to us and to the implementation of the governance regulation. Regarding the revision of the governance, this is well written in the homework, which is the mission letter of my commissioner, and it has been recently, so in February, when we published the action plan for affordable energy. It is also mentioned there that the Commission will revise the governance, and the main aim of that, the main goal is to enable the European Union to have a more robust European energy union. Okay, so this is the main aim. Of course, we also see, and this is a feedback received from stakeholders, that we need also to pay attention to simplification of rules, not over-regulate. But I don't see a contradiction between simplification and multi-level dialogue. I don't see that. I see a need for the multi-level dialogue for the reasons I mentioned already before. We are, let's say, we need to fast-track the energy transition for reasons related to energy security, energy affordability, and, of course, sustainability. And in order to fast-track the energy transition, we need to have all actors on board. So if we do not have the local level with us, nothing will happen. It's fundamental that all these layers are involved, are consulted, participate in decision-making, and feel to have the ownership. Look at what is happening already now across the member states when you push for higher levels of deployment of renewables. You start having strong opposition. So you need to have the local level well involved in the decision-making that leads to, to the opportunity to have such projects being implemented in the ground. If you allow me, I know that you don't want to link the multi-level dialogue only to the NECPs, but it's an important thing, part of the NECPs. And allow me to say one thing. As you, if you follow the news, I mean, and the opinion leaders, more and more these NECPs are seen as the investment plans. So in order to get there, you need to invest. And we have heard before that, okay, public budgets are strained, and so they must be used to trigger the private investment. And these plans, especially, I mean, any plan, any long-term planning, in periods of instability, uncertainty, they can bring the necessary confidence of investors. And therefore, I think that a lot can be expected out of these plans. We are, from the Commission side, doing our best. We have received final plans. We will be publishing soon our assessments. I have to say that they may not be perfect, but the plans that we have assessed are of much higher quality than the drafts. And it shows that this interaction with member states, and I trust that also interaction inside the member states with these different layers of governance, have enabled to produce better plans. Again, they are not perfect, but I think that they are good for the purpose and to get us there to 2030. And now let's see, with the revision of the governance, we will have to go beyond 2030, to look at 2040 and so on. So I find that more and more we need dialogue inside our energy union. And these suggestions like the Council debating the issue, eventually having shared sessions with the Committee of Regions, why not? This is something you could voice in your own member states and propose that one sitting in the Council, by the way, it's not a Commission. So that is perhaps a good suggestion to follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula, as well very much for this very comprehensive answer. What struck me is really the truth that simplification plays for multi-level governance, not against it. And I would just add, provided that there is enough political will and public awareness of the importance of climate and energy goals. But this is really, we need more good governance, less regulations. But if we don't have good governance, then we have a problem. Then we tend to over-regulate things. Anybody else maybe wants to add something? Yes, Matthias, please.
Just very briefly, since Paula rightly pointed out that there's this notion that NECPs ideally essentially become investment plans. Then, if we're looking at the things that the many initiatives and the new frameworks that the European Commission has either already published or is preparing, there is the whole reform of the multi-annual financial framework that we're looking at, where there is the suggestion that there is going to be an integration into, for example, also one main national plan of sorts. And so, I think the key question here would be, for NECPs to really be playing that role, I think they need to be plugged in to that process in some form, be connected to the MFF, and multi-level climate energy dialogues, or just strengthening multi-level governance, may need to consider ways in which it can also be connected with existing structures or dialogues that may exist at member state level about spending of EU level funding. So that's there may be potential for a simplification there, but that may also add further complexity, actually, to start with.
Right, thank you, Matthias, very much. I have to say, from my perspective as local politician, that only those things which are contained in city budget, national budget, or MFF will happen in reality. Those which are not reflected are just empty words, nice ideas, and this kind of stuff. Anybody else on this question? No? Do we have another one? Oh, great. First, Madam in yellow. Sure.
Thank you. I also have a question for Mrs. Abreu Marques. I was wondering if you would consider, or if you think it's valuable, to provide member states guidelines for implementing Article 11, because we keep hearing about the obstacles, about how national or local authorities do not know how to get involved, how to actually build this dialogue. And it could be either guidelines or application norms coming from the European Commission, or just endorse an effort which you already financed and it has been developed within the NECPlatform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paola. Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, it's something that's for consideration. I think that, and you pick up the brochure, I think that already the work that comes out from these important projects, if it is disseminated across the member states and at the local level, I think it can bring valuable impact. So I think it's important to make these results and findings and experiences known across the 27 member states. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, sub-question?
No, just to add something, usually the methodology of European-funded projects requires from us to have all the deliverables present online and disseminated for quite some time. But in this case, we were actually wondering if you could just spread the word, because it's difficult for member states to search for projects, for efforts done by small consortiums like ours. But if it comes from the European Commission directly, it might have more to say.
Yeah, of
Just
course.
to complete my answer. So of course you are totally right, and for sure there are, instances where we can, and events that we can use to promote this. My first thought is obviously the big gathering on energy, which happens every year in June in Brussels, Sustainable Energy Week. So I think it will be a very good opportunity to disseminate broadly the work that was done in these projects. But happy to look for other opportunities, also together with our executive agency. Which are the opportunities that we have to raise the profile and even, why not, distribute this work also amongst the energy ministers. We just had yesterday a meeting of the Energy Council. So meetings like these are also an opportunity to share this information. So happy to do it for the next time. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for your answer. And we have another question from lady over there. Okay.
Good afternoon. My question is also for Mrs. Abreu Marques. Boa tarde. How to address the importance of multi-level dialogues in view of the local elections that are going to happen in Portugal later this year, and what is the role that civil society can play in that process, in your view, of course? Obrigada.
Boa tarde. I will answer in general. I think the most important thing that this kind of dialogues can help to is to inform the population so that they take well-informed decisions when going to vote. First of all, go to vote. Because in my country, unfortunately, I don't think we have a very old democracy, but citizens seem not interested anymore in participating in the political choices. So first of all, to inform the people and convince the people that it's important to go to vote, and help them take an informed decision on their vote. So in general, I'm not talking about energy. Of course, energy is playing more and more an important role in the decisions of our citizens, be it because of the climate impacts or because of the cost of energy. So obviously, it will be also debated during the electoral campaign. But really, I think that everything that can be done to inform the population and convince them, encourage them to be active in the elections is most welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, the third row is the most active row. So another question from the third row. Please, madam.
Emina Pasik, Swedish Energy Agency, representing National Energy Agency from Sweden. And I have also a question for Commission. about actually possibility to link this work on NCPs to the mission, work on the mission cities and mission adoption. Because at the national level we have some fragmentation on the national national level in these two different groups, because we have groups who are involving researchers and national platforms from national platforms working on development of climaticity contract and mission labeling, and on the other side at the local and regional level is NCPs, which we also trying to coordinate from the national level, but still it's like a fragmentation in different groups and different stakeholders. But at the end, it's like the same cities and same cities administration which we need to govern both of these groups. And maybe this is like an issue also for the link to the Horizon Europe instruments and how this work could be maybe done on some more higher quality, as colleagues explained, that these dialogues is really needed to have a better quality and structure.
Please.
I don't know if I understood correctly what was the issue, but perhaps I could offer some elements of reflection. I don't think that perhaps the aim should be to merge things or combine things, but I think the aim should be that in every project or stream of work that touched upon similar issues or connected issues, that's I mean, the same position, the same line, the same flow is included there. So for consistency and coherence of policy. I think that's fundamental. Not necessarily means merging or combining different work streams. I don't know enough, I have to say, I don't know enough about the missions to tell you whether they find a place in the NECPs or how they could be combined. But I think the most important thing is to ensure consistency and coherence in the policy decisions. Yeah.
Just
yes.
Short reflection. Shortly, what I mean, it's like, do you have some activities which you, on strategic level, planning to some connection between climate city contracts and NCPs? Is it some activities which could be of interest to connect and to find some links between these two instruments?
I think so, but perhaps those in the panel who are more involved in the implementation of the plans and eventually in both initiatives, they are better placed than me to respond to your question, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, please. Benedetta?
Yes, only a simple reflection. I think that it's clear that today there is no actual instrument that generate a direct connection to all these, to the mission, to all the other options that we could have. But I think that one of the most goals that we have, for example, like energy agencies, is to study and is to try to create this kind of connection. And in particular, I have the honor to be also the vice president in FEDEREN, that is the European network of the energy agencies. And the presence of every one of us also at the European level is, in particular, is important to try to generate the right discussion and find together the right way. Because in this time, I think that the most important thing is to understand that we need to create the bridge. And in this case, doesn't exist this kind of bridge. And we need a lot to start with this kind of thinking, because we don't have time So we have a problem, the time. And if we want to generate a great and brilliant path, parallel, so si dice parallele, good experience, good example, but we don't have time to have a moment at the end of our life in which we could discuss about about the richness of this different experience. We need to be coherent and to work together now, step by step, in a very simple way, starting, for example, to do this kind of connection in every country and to try to discuss them in a coherent way in a European level. And I think that also the bottom-up experience could say a lot from this side. And we have the house of the Committee of the Region, for example. We have the dialogue with the Commission. And in this official situation, we could bring all the analysis. In Italy, for example, we try to do this analysis in the board of the Committee of the Regions, in the national network of the energy agencies, and I am the general director of the national network of the agencies, and I go often to the Italian ministry to try to discuss, to try also to tell them how it's complex for a mayor to have all these different solicitations. It's not absolutely simple, and it's important to tell and to take time for the narrative of this kind of different approach that we have in the last mile, because in this last mile happen a lot of things. And when we want to create a nitrogen plan, for example, the last mile is very different from the discussion that you have at the national level, for example. I think that is more or less the same thing, not simple, but we could have easy key, easy instrument, starting, for example, to discuss. We are here to speak about the importance of the multi-level governance, and we think that also in a bottom way, with a bottom-up approach, we could do really a very central rule. We could be a key in this case, but yes, I think that we need absolutely to create this kind of connection.
Thank you very much, Benedetta. And in order to stay within prescribed time limits, I will invite last question from the gentleman from Croatia. Miljenko, you have the floor.
It's not really a question, it's more of a reflection, because we had the same issue in Croatia as well with missions, and then we had this issue with multi-level governance, but there is a common denominator for all these actions, and I think Anna will complement this, what I'm saying now. It is actually the money, and it's the cohesion policy that we are talking about, because climate city contracts are all about, if you know about them, it's about investments, and this is the news they bring in. This is the investment. This is very important, and that's why, for example, the continuation of our work in Croatia will be mostly focused with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Regional Development. First is basically to see how can we integrate energy and climate issues into the budgetary constraints. So how can we mainstream this into the local and regional budgets, but also the national budget. And we'll have pilots, which I think Anna will say more about that. And the second thing is actually the new the cohesion policy, and how do we embed these things into that. Because if we keep working in energy and climate silos, as we do for now, honestly, then we'll have these problems again. We'll have missions and cities, and they'll have their climate city contracts. We'll have the NECPs, which are nice documents, but honestly, we are already beyond them. We have to think more broadly than they are. And this is why we will continue this platform in Croatia, mostly with the Ministry of Regional and Ministry of Finance, because we found that this is the way to go, because, you know, always, as Joshko mentioned earlier, the funds and the money is, you know, if you don't have it, if it's not in the budgets, you're not going to do it. So I don't know, maybe Anna, you would like to compliment?
So, yes, remark will be met by comment from Anna Zoric. Yes, please.
So the messages involve finance ministries. So basically, without the dialogue, including the finance ministries and both at the national and on a regional level, not much can be achieved. So you cannot implement green budgeting without the dialogue with the cities and municipalities and regions, how this will be implemented. You can't have any kind of project financing through green bonds, issuance of green bonds, or any other capital markets approach without including the finance ministry and working through the finances. So basically, include your finance ministries in the dialogue, push them to understand why climate and energy dialogues are important for your countries, and this is this will be a big push for the climate and energy dialogues in your countries.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you, all of you, for these questions, remarks, and answers for this interesting discussion. Now we are moving to the final part of our panel, and there's the final thoughts of our panelists. They will share it with us, and I will just ask them if they can include in their final remark at least one key recommendation, how to strengthen multi-level governance. So we can start from the right to the left. So Alessandra, please, floor is yours.
From Romania point of view, I think that now the most important is to align local, regional and national strategies. And this alignment is important not only from the objectives, climate and energy objectives point of view, but also because these strategies are fundamental instruments to access national and European funding.
Thank you. Commission?
A final thought. I think I mentioned this already before, but perhaps now with more emphasis. If there is a need to convince your central governments that it is necessary to involve the regional and local level, I think an easy way of doing it is to say you need implementation in order to deliver on the objectives of the policy. And for that, without the local level and regional level, without the involvement of all actors, you don't get there. So if you link it to implementation, success in implementation, I think you can make it and convince the central governments to pay more attention to these multi-layer dialogues and actors in the energy and climate policy.
Thank you very much, Paula. Anna, please, your final thoughts.
I'm a lawyer by vocation and working in a finance ministry, but I'm always emphasizing to build on the capacities on all levels. So basically listen to the experts, engage them in the dialogues, motivate young experts to enter the ministries, the local and regional government. Only the knowledge will bring us further.
Thank you. Speaking of experts, Benedetta, it's your two minutes.
Okay, absolutely agree about the points that you said now. But for me, the most important thing is to analyze that the global strategy take action in local level. And second point, that we don't have time, so coordinate ourselves is the key. If you don't have time, if you are in a football match, you have 90 minutes, and these are the minutes. At the end is the end of the match. So coordinate ourselves is the key, and I think that is very important for every one of us. I speak about also the institution, but also the technical advisor like the energy agencies and the citizen and the mayors. we need to have the l'umiltà, humbleness, to understand the right place that we must have in the match, and we must respect the other, because when there is no time, the best is that you do the best in the place that is your place, and only in this way we could really be a team. And I think that today the problem is that we are thinking about this point. It's important to start and to be a real team from the European level to the last and the smallest municipality in Europe.
Thank you. As I always insist that climate change should not be driven by politics, by science, the final word today by the scientist. Please, Matthias.
Thank you very much. It's a tough one, I think, because we're really trying to achieve this local level implementation, which is kind of hard to direct from the top. I have kind of myself moved to a more kind of rural part just outside of Berlin recently, and I'm seeing much less affinity for a progressive ecological green agenda in election results, etc., and see what people care about. Some of them are kind of the mundane things that can be part of a green transition, like your frequency of the shuttle trains into town and what have you, and all kinds of things. So it's like if you're going to the local level and seeing the problems that communities face, you want to somehow say, we need to be doing everything at once, and so it's very hard to see how we manage this level of complexity and really go down from top to the bottom. But seeing as I'm looking at this kind of more at the level of what, say, in this city, for example, can be changed that then triggers things, I would come back to revising the article to become more specific. If we believe that this is a good idea, that's the start. If we have Article 10 on the NECPs, if that's sufficient for, strengthen that, and then get rid of Article 11 for the multi-level climate energy dialogues. But, if that is meant to be a good idea and you want to institutionalize this and support that, then it needs more attention, further specification, and ultimately maybe, I don't know, through TSI support or whatever, a means of, governments actually having the money to invest in these processes, which can be time-consuming and take up resources.
Thank you very much, and let me thank all of you for your contribution and input to this discussion. I think that we heard many interesting things and got many interesting information which we can use back home in our everyday work, and that is what is important, really, to implement what we were advocating here at home in reality, in our real world. And now, last but not least, Mr. Frédéric Boyer, Head of Covenant of Mayors Europe, closing remarks and future perspectives. Frédéric, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Klisovic. Good afternoon, everyone. And very happy to be in this room with many known faces. I will start with the very good news. The NECPlatform is offering a cocktail. That's just after my speech. It's just out of this door. So you will have to bear with me. I will try to be quite fast. I think most of the messages were passed today. And when looking at what I wanted to say, I find many points and things that I probably will repeat with my own words. But first, starting with what Paola said at the end, the implementation. The implementation, and I think we all convinced here, has to happen on the ground. That has to happen locally with each of us as citizens, as local politicians, as experts, taking our part of the cake of this transition if we only look at the question of the transition on climate and energy. But there are many other topics that in any case have to happen locally. So for that, and that was the topic of this NECPlatform project, and that's also the topic of several opinions of the Committee of the Region, the one that our chair just mentioned today, multi-level governance on the Green Deal. There's also another opinion of the Committee of the Region on active subsidiarity that I actually invite you to look at. There are very good recommendations on how this could be truly implemented. Why do we need this better multi-level governance and subsidiarity? First of all, because that's the way to bring European policies, an EU vision, closer to the citizens. And that's particularly important in a moment where we see populist parties growing in many places of Europe and beyond. And to be part of this big EU project, the Green Deal, and I think there was a huge adhesion behind that from citizens because they want to see a change and they want to see it now. So first bringing it closer to citizens, and then also what is very necessary in an implementation of policy, and that was reminded by Mr. Klisovic, the 70, 75, I mean we can discuss the figure, but of legislation being implemented locally. So for that, you need really to have a place-based approach. You need to look at what are the needs, because every territory in Europe is different, physically, but also in the way they are structured, in the way they are administrated, and in their capacities. So that's why there is no silver bullet solution for that. You need to have to tailor-make it at, let's say, local level, and then bring this discussion at national level. Main lessons that I got from the discussion today, the fact that it's put into EU legislation is very useful. Okay, we started with this Article 11. Maybe we should do a big campaign around Article 11. I don't think my mum knows what it is, but still, I mean, the fact that it's part of the legislation really forces member states to launch something. We see from the project that it's easier if someone else is taking it and bringing it to the attention of national authorities and helping delivering. So thanks to EU money for that, through this project to do it. But that's a big start, having that in legislation. And that's, I mean, I hope that that can inspire other pieces of legislation, and we had a few examples on the screen before, and that has to be replicated. And particularly in the context of discussion of a new multi-annual financial framework, we need to have local authorities associated to this discussion to see how we can direct the money to get efficient implementation of policies. So legislation is key. Then we need some methodology and support. So, okay, we have the guidelines, how to do it, and maybe Paola helping with bringing it to the attention of energy attaché or energy ministers responsible for that. But again, we need to go much beyond than that, because this multi-level governance has to become something, a common practice in EU policy, well, not only EU, but in policy making and implementation. That's very important to hear, and this is what was discussed today, to hear the needs, the capacities of each of the stakeholders so that they can play, as Benetta put it, with the image of the football team, and everyone is playing his own role and not messing with the position of another one. So that's very important. We need to give methodology and support. We heard a lot about the capacities. And I mean, working for a network of cities, because if I'm managing the Covenant of Mayors, which is a new initiative I work for, I'm a colleague of Thibault and Melanie at Energy Cities, we often, and we actually have a campaign which is called Local Staff for Climate. But it's good to hear Anna saying it's the same at national level. We are also missing staff. And then when you are in the Brussels bubble and you have colleagues working in the Commission, they are also telling you, well, we are missing staff to do things. So we should not criticize the other ones for not doing. They are also very often missing the capacities, the knowledge and the staff to do it. And unfortunately, the trend of public budget cut is not very optimistic on that. But we need to defend ourselves, defend that, and explain that this is necessary. Those people who know how to coordinate, and we know and we push for that also at local level when we hear about the climate city contract that starts with engaging stakeholders. That's not something everyone knows how to do. You need to be a social engineer. You need to know how to talk to citizens. Politicians know how to do that, but you also need experts to convene them, to discuss with them. And so this, again, building the capacities of local, national, European authorities to have this kind of dialogues with all types of stakeholders is key. And then another last element I take out of the discussion is this question of individuals. At the end, it also boils down to having the right people. I mean, Anna saying and looking at the colleagues of Regea, because now they know, maybe they take beers together, and then they are implementing things. It's also finding the right people that are committed, that accept to go beyond their role, beyond their political affiliation, beyond, and to be in a dialogue, to be constructive, to accept the point of view of the others and find a compromise. And I think that's very necessary that we reach this point. So now, because I also need to promote a little bit the initiative that is that I'm representing here, the Covenant of Mayors. Where are we here? So we heard a lot of Il Patto dei Sindaci. That's the name in Italy. The Covenant of Mayors, very successful there, and in other countries too. Belgium, 98% of the municipalities in Belgium are signatories of the Covenant. In Spain, like 2,000 signatories. Then I won't talk about France because we're not very successful in terms of numbers. But just to say, the success of this initiative, which was launched 2009 by the Commission, completely bottom-up and actually bypassing member states at the beginning. No question. We don't work with them. It's the Commission, the cities. The success was the contribution of regions, provinces, energy agencies, and then later ministries. I could give the example of Czech Republic. When they decided to allocate funding to cities joining the Covenant, we got 200 cities from Czech Republic in like 2 weeks. Of course, as soon as you put some support, financial support or technical support to a political commitment taken by a mayor to work on climate and energy and go beyond the EU climate and energy objectives, that works. And that's why this question of multi-level governance is so important. So we try to promote that. How do we do that? These dialogues, first by having one at EU level. We have a Covenant board made of around 12 to 15 mayors of different countries, representing different city networks, representing the Committee of the Region, representing the other key EU initiatives. We heard about the EU Climate Neutral Cities Mission, the EU Mission Adaptation, because we want to have one, if possible, board talking to Commissioner Jorgensen, Vice President Fito, and all the other important people in the institution to have this dialogue, because that has to start at this level and have cities and regions recognized as key players of the transition. We also try to go national with the limited capacities we have by working actually with partners, identifying them and trying to see how they can be empowered to have these dialogues. And well, some of them are in the room, so those people have been helping us connecting, mobilizing new cities, because of course when you have more signatories, it's easier to go and have influence on your ministry. And we have this very inspiring example that Benedetta presented of trying to create those dialogues. She called it a board, because this is the name it has, a board of the Covenant Galaxy in Italy, bringing national agencies, mayors, National Association of Mayors, and soon, hopefully, representative of the Mission for Climate Neutral Cities, representative of the Mission for Adaptation. And that, I see that I mean, the way forward. How could we have these in 27 member states, you know, really implementing this dialogue to see what are the remaining obstacles to the implementation of the EU legislation, which is already the ambition of the EU, and the legislation is in place. Now, what we need to do is just to implement it. So those examples, what we're trying to do at the moment is to collect them. So we have a few. We already have the example of Croatia that is published on our website, because we are launching a small mini campaign. And I think it was you, Matthias, saying we need showcasing. Well, this is exactly where we're trying to help with the covenant, showcasing good example of multi-level governance. We have one about Cyprus. We will build one around some regions in Italy to explain how they are providing technical, financial support to the cities, how they are helping them reporting on how they are performing on their transition. And hopefully that would trigger in some years an NECP being a sum, the addition of all the sustainable, local sustainable energy action plan, because at the end of the day, whether you call it a climate city contract, a sustainable energy and climate action plan, those are local NECPs that should be summed up to be the implementation of the NECP and hopefully to push member states to be even more ambitious, because they will see that the potential of implementation exists. But they will need to look into that. And at this stage, I think we're a bit lagging behind in terms of what the Article 11 and all those discussions have been bringing. So showcasing, you heard me, we're looking for good examples. We want to promote them. We will have a map on our website, and hopefully with examples in as many member states as we can to show how this cooperation between local, regional, local, national authorities can be put in place. So to finish, because I know you're all looking forward to the cocktail. Thibault was asking stop or encore. So for the French, the people who understand a bit French, I would say encore plus. We need many more of those key examples, more dialogues, and more of those meetings here to showcase again the added value of a good collaboration, an active subsidiarity for climate and energy to be, for Europe to reach climate neutrality as fast as possible, and also to be resilient to the effect of climate change. Thanks a lot, and have a good cocktail.
Thank you, Frederic, for your closing remarks. And with your closing remarks, we have brought this panel to its conclusion. Thank you, all of you, for being here with us today, for participating in the panel. And as you heard, you are invited for cocktail.